Oh yeah, for sure. I think it is.
Well, the hour being 3 o'clock, this 18th day of January, we'll call the agenda and priorities meeting of council to order. We have an agenda before us. Any additions, deletions?
Yes, Your Worship. Just a change to this agenda. Just changing out of the delegations 3.1, removing Gina Marshall and Shay Howell, replacing with Christian Scott and Donna Nazar. And also 3.2, council to add in the draft North Area Structure Plan review to include delegation from Greg Smith from Tagish Engineering and Craig Teal from Parkland Community Planning Services.
Okay. All right. Is someone prepared to make a motion? We adopt this as amended.
Your Worship, I'll make the motion that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, ladies, you have an opportunity. Would you like to come up and talk to us?
Ready? This is kind of scary.
Oh, no.
So I'll read my letter. I've submitted mine and Darylyn's to the Johnny there. Hopefully I don't ramble too quickly. I'm not good in public speaking, so here we go. Dear Mayor Jim Romaine and Town of Innisfil Council members, I'm writing you today in regards to the recent events of our town concerning Blades to Fades Barbershop. The recent Alberta Public Health Order was in place, stated that hair salon businesses were not allowed to open or be operating due to the high COVID numbers. Blades to Fades decided to defy that order. They have decided to take a stand and say they stand up for small businesses in our community. They purposefully and defiantly opened their business. I feel their actions, along with the former Councillor Glenn Carrick's public vow of support, was not only hurtful but harmful to our businesses in town, and also the personal services industry, which I had created my own business. Not only did I feel that they do not speak for us as an industry, their words, online videos, and comments are hurtful and harmful to our community as a whole. Their actions have put our community at risk in many ways. They do not speak for me or my industry, and do not speak for our community. I understand that Blades to Fades felt that it was their only option to open their business against the regulations. I understand that they felt they had to do so in order to feed their family and be able to keep their business running until the public health orders were rescinded. I myself have had to make careful financial decisions to stay afloat as well. I grew up in this community and I've decided to create my business in here as well. I feel the actions of Natalie Klein, Blades to Fades Barbershop, and Glenn Carrot have severely divided our community. My fellow colleagues nor I were contacted about this. Had we been contacted, we may have been able to come together and work to petition our government about opening our businesses. They didn't lean on our community or our industry, they just defiantly opened. They didn't have the industry nor community in mind by opening. If they did, they would have reached out prior to opening. They opened for themselves. By opening before public health order allowed us to, some of my clients have decided to show support. That has lost income for my salon. Other salons in town have also lost business. By being open, they took away long-standing clients of ours. They were making money for their business while myself and other salons in the area remain closed. That is not unity. That's not supportive of other local businesses. That is looking out for themselves. As their defiance continued, they posted videos on their Facebook page that they had rebranded as a dog groomer and was providing animal cuts for humans and selling dog and cat food. Their business license was for salon services only, not grooming. Not only did their actions contradict their business license for its intended purposes, they disregarded how groomers in our province felt. I also feel that by opening against the public health orders, Blades to Fades has put our community at risk, or at greater health risk. While this is true, hair services businesses do not have high COVID transmission rates. By opening early, they attracted Albertans from all across the province. Some clients came from COVID hotspots like Calgary or Edmonton. My community has worked very hard to keep our case numbers low. We also have worked very hard to protect each other. I feel that they put our community at risk. Watching Glen Carrott's online Facebook videos, it seemed like they were not masking in close company and that they had more than the recommended people inside their salon. One of their clients even posted on Facebook about a beard trim. It is not possible to wear a mask while getting a beard trim. I feel recklessly opening against public health orders has put our community's health at risk. What kind of example have they set for the people of our province? I feel that by opening during a public health order, they set a precedence that if businesses defy the governments, they can do whatever they want to. This to me is not a great example of our industry, nor of the personal services professionals that we work hard within it. The publicity shamed our leaders rather than working hard to ask poignant questions of our governments. They also posted a video of a public health officer on their Facebook page publicly shaming her. In the video, she seemed terrified and afraid to step in their business. She had police escort in order to keep her safe. Intimidating someone coming into their business as a messenger is not what safe, successful businesses do. I observed online that the building owner of Blades and Fades rents their space, had to hire security for the time that Blades to Fades was defiantly open. This could be in order to protect his building from potential vandalism. I don't want to see any businesses fail, but this was a total disrespectful display of our industry and put our community in a poor national spotlight. Innisfil as a whole comes together to solve problems. While our neighbors are struggling, we come together to ease each other's burdens. The way Blades to Fades went about opening is against all Innisfil is known for. Blades to Fades Barbershop opened without regards for their community. We need to work together now to heal and bring our community together. There is strength in numbers, and members from my industry are here and have written letters and have called about this matter. Blades to Fades did not have the community in mind when they opened last week. We are here to show you that we stand for the resilience, strength, health, and unity of our industry, and most importantly, our community. Thank you. Did y'all get that? Yeah. I'm shaking like a sieve. Okay.
Well, Kristen's pretty much summed everything up on how we feel. But I just have some questions. I just want to know why. Why didn't the town revoke their license? Why did the town let them open up as a dog grooming business? Like, I just am here for some answers. Like, why? Like, why did we let it go on?
Yeah. Todd, do you want to? I know you. No, I can. I will respond to it as well. But I know you've been doing some work on the business license part. But
when you sign on a business license, you state in there what you are going to be doing and selling. Like, I can't sell Scentsy out of my salon because I'm not covered under my business license, and I know that, so I don't sell Scentsy.
Well, I think you probably gathered from now that council did not endorse what they were doing by any means, and it's all we can do as a council is inform the authorities of what's happening, and they stepped in and pulled their, or whatever you call it, labeled the business to be closed, and they chose to go beyond that again. So, and then it was followed up, I believe, with some reprimand from the RCMP as well, or a court.
Like, what I've gathered is they have no fines, but they have a court date, but all it says is something to do about them ripping the paper off and more AHS stuff. So I'm just wondering too, do we have the support of town for their reckless behavior? Like, is there going to be a reprimand somehow?
Oh, okay. Well, I certainly, we did not,
Support it.
and didn't endorse it by any means. And we felt, at least most of us, I think, felt, with the exception of one, that we had let the
As his seat is empty.
let the authorities deal with it, because you know it's awkward for council to act as a police force on these government regulations. So we left it up to the proper authorities, and perhaps it could have happened a day or two sooner or something, but it's just the way it worked out. But
Yeah, I mean, I found out about it on Facebook. Like,
I know.
My opinion about the situation, if I think community-wise as a whole would have been different to come together for it. But to me, they're just one grain of rice in the rice box of why everything happened. I don't think 100% them being defiant made Kenny's choice to open everything. I think it was people coming together. And I mean, Innisfil, had they approached other businesses, it might have been different in our point of view.
Yeah, there's like all of us lawns in town agree on the same thing. Like, we are totally against what happened there, because most of us have been salon owners. I've got 2 businesses in town. Am I going to go and do something illegal? Like, what's going to happen to me?
No.
Would you take my business license? I think they should have their business license taken away.
well, again, there will be some court
Stuff.
coming
Yeah, but
up
then
from
now
it.
they've got a GoFundMe page. They've got
Rebel
people
News
throwing
page.
money at them, and we're just like, here,
Well,
we've
these-
lost clients.
These
and-
things are always awkward, but our goal as council is to be on side with Alberta Health Services and try and get our life back to normal with this COVID.
And I think with their whole stand, like, I support standing up for your rights 100%, but I think the way they went about it, the ripple effect has caused a huge divide in Innisfil. You have their supporters and you have their non-supporters.
Yeah.
And I mean, where is that going to come back together, where we're all in this together? Like how Innisfil has been, well, I've been here for 40 some years, almost 40 years. And I mean, I've never seen that happen.
Yeah.
There's never been such a split.
Well, you're not alone, because I know a lot of people have said to me, I know myself, that's BS what's going on over there. And
the thing that bothered me the most too is, like, I sponsor so much stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So much stuff in this town. And to see, like, especially if you ask any of the kinsmen what I've done for them, they will tell you. And to see some of them go in there for haircuts, guess what?
Yeah, that's not okay.
When they come around for donations, how am I going to feel about that?
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Like,
it's unfortunate. That's exactly what happens, because it's small communities and we're all working together for the small business.
Yeah.
We've got a couple big guys in town, big employers, but other than that, we're pretty dependent on small businesses, especially service clubs and the community in general working with them.
And we've all dealt with the changes and restrictions and this and that and the other thing. And you see them on video not wearing masks in public, and their maximum is 2 people on their video with the news or whatever. You see 6 people in there. And then you see there's a client of mine's child got their hair cut in there, and he's 14, and there's a picture on there of him not wearing a mask. Yeah. Kids are exempt that are under grade 4 in schools. Like, how is that following the regulations?
No.
Being that if they would have followed the regulations, only let 2 people in and blah, 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 done all the stuff that's regulatory, I think the view would have been a little bit different, but and then you see her talking with the camera, not like within 6 feet without a mask. Like, I mean, I don't like wearing a mask.
No.
I can't breathe in these things. Like, I wear it all the time. I mean, it's a mask.
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see what comes of this hearing.
Do I want to see them fail? No, I'm not in the
No.
industry or saying that I want to see any businesses fail, but I don't think they stood for us or our community at all. Nothing.
I know our CAO, Becker, I'm not trying to put you on the
Oh,
spot.
I'm ready.
You had some information on the business license and
Yeah, for sure. Just on the question of the business license. So when AHS moved to apply their enforcement, accompanied by the RCMP, we did take a look at our business license bylaw.
Okay.
We also received quite a bit of feedback from the community on
Oh, so we're not alone.
on the application of the enforcement of the business license bylaw.
Okay.
So our support is to AHS and RCMP to enact what they feel is appropriate in this case. So we had a review. The review is still ongoing, actually, but there's some wording in the bylaw create a little bit of question to go in and revoke. We did make contact to the business regarding there was some indication of a new location.
Yep.
They confirmed there was not a new location. However, we did indicate and communicate that any change of location requires a new business license. I didn't see or hear anything more besides hearing it through social media of a change of use, which would require a review, a different application altogether. But I think it's more of an indication through social media than an actual event of changing into a dog grooming. So we didn't react on that social media messaging. But we're testing our bylaw right now on business license. So municipalities build out a business license bylaw on the level of enforcement they wish to apply to business. So,
But if they're open illegally, how can their business license and stuff not be at risk?
So some of the wording, and council's going to hear this into next week on some of the gaps that we're seeing in the bylaw, and ours is associated to bylaw, not AHS or other enforcement layers. So that was a little bit larger than I think what our bylaw is representing.
You guys weren't ready for
So
that.
I want to make sure that we had meat in the bylaw before I started having enforcement of.
Okay.
I didn't want to leave it open for interpretation. I need to solidify, but council is going to hear the information, likely ask for a review in more detail and give us direction on what level of enforcement do you want to apply using this situation or example as a benchmark. So you'll hear more of that over the next few weeks, but a little bit questioning of our bylaw and just on the meat of it to actually use it as enforcement
So
to this
gray
level.
area.
Kinda. I just want to make sure it's totally secure before I started putting that into the face. And so I just wasn't quite there.
Okay.
But certainly that is in our
Question.
ability. It's expected through council, through bylaw, that we don't have to come out and ask them, do we want to enforce the bylaw? Council sets the bylaw. It's up to administration to apply the bylaw. So if it was all ready to go, it would have been my responsibility to the staff to apply that enforcement, but I wasn't quite there.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm not trying to skirt
No,
the issue, but
it is what it is.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
and it's funny how Glenn was on his interview saying how he's not doing anything illegal. Oh, are you kidding me? You're breaking the law. Like, we all want to go back to work. We all want to see small businesses, excel. And the thing is, if it wasn't for small businesses, these box stores wouldn't be, like, there wouldn't be a Walmart, there wouldn't be like a Home Depot or whatever, if it wasn't for us small businesses in these small communities growing, right? So for him to make that comment, that was not right.
We all have our opinions.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think what's important is you're not alone, and I know the majority of the community is behind you. This is not you can't just by the whim of maybe it's questionable if it's illegal or not if you're supporting something that's illegal, but if you're just sort of standing by and watching it happen, it pretty much makes you brings you involved. But anyways, we understand your concerns. I don't know, as Councillor
well, just your worship through to Kristen and Donna, just a quick question, a little bit different area, but you know, I'm assuming like even now that you're open, you're probably not at full capacity that you would be if there was no COVID. So
no, like,
yeah.
I used to do men's haircuts every 15 minutes.
Okay.
Now I have to allot half an hour.
Okay.
Women were every half an hour. Now I have to allot 45 minutes because I have to clean. So, I mean, it is business lost due to the restrictions, but I'm glad to be open.
Yeah. So I guess my question would be, you know, around the supports that are available, there's federal government supports, income supports, there's supports for direct payments to tenants to help with that area. There's some Alberta supports as well that got changed last week. And I don't know if you're totally familiar with all those, but is there something that's missing? Like, are people like yourselves falling through the cracks and not able to get those supports?
I myself haven't had to.
Okay.
Like, I don't have overhead of a salon,
right.
a place to rent. Yeah. I'm out of my home. Okay. So I haven't, I know all about the extra stuff, yeah. But me financially, I've been okay on the CERB and stuff. But I mean, if they're there, I would, and I need them, I would definitely apply for them. But as of right now, like, I mean, I guess
what I'm getting at, like if the supports aren't adequate or people are falling through the cracks, that may be something that, you know, we should know about or get that information, whether, you know, the chamber starts to kind of gather that kind of thing, because that may be something where as a council, you can kind of help advocate to other levels of government to say, hey, like the supports are great, but
it's not
this and this and this, that these people are falling through the cracks because of whatever. I mean, we don't know that, but you know,
for sure people have fallen through the cracks. I myself haven't. I mean,
I know for myself, I can't have all the girls working at once. Like we used to have everybody in there. It was just, you know, busy. I can't have, you know, all my chairs full. So we have to have, you know, 3 girls in maybe at a time, distancing. So yeah, I've lost a lot because of that. And for even, I feel bad because I can't hire any of these apprentices anymore because I can't give them like the walk-ins that they need to learn, right? So I feel bad for the young ones starting out because I can't hire anybody. I used to take in apprentices all the time. I can't do that anymore.
But also with an apprentice, you have to have a licensed stylist always there. So that takes away from your other people that are part-time coming in. You have to accommodate the newbie for the old people. So
it's been hard. Yeah, very much.
Your Worship. Yeah, just obviously haven't said anything today, so just wanted to say thank you very much for coming in and obviously following a process. I feel that through the events that we've all been aware of, speaking on just on behalf of myself, I feel the desired outcome of having businesses being opened and having that ambition or passion to really advocate for something is something that I think you can't buy that. There's no price tag on that. So I can fully support people that are passionate about something. But what I do feel is that there is a process and the process needs to be followed. And I think that if someone's able to respect a process and instill their passion to that, that's where you're going to get the most outcome, because it's just, I feel that's the magic mixture. And I do feel that through businesses like yourself coming forward, that's how we can get it on the books. We can all hear about it. There's not mixed messages. It's just respecting the process. And I think that's how we're going to get the most traction. So I appreciate you guys coming in, and I feel anyone that has any concerns in the community, wasn't hard to come into the office and try to get yourselves in that spotlight where we want to hear from the community. We want to work with everyone here and follow process as well. So just want to say thank you for coming in and deliberating like you have.
Your hair looks awesome, by the way.
It is a legal haircut from Corey Savella. So, anyways, thank you.
Councillor Bates, I believe, was.
Well, I personally applaud the points you've made in your letter. I think it's quite well done.
I had help.
Pardon me?
I had help.
Oh, okay. Well, I applaud you.
Don't tell me.
And I look forward to us looking at our bylaws to see if we can help plug some of the holes that might be there. And yes, I personally was embarrassed for Innisfail last week.
Yeah.
And
I
so
mean, Innisfail now is known for the rebellious Blades and Fades that opened. It's, you know, that's.
We're on the map now. Anybody looking to, you know, when they want to buy a place here or something, they, you know, they do their
All you
research,
have to do is
right?
Google it.
Google it. Google it, yeah. Oh my goodness.
anyway, let's hope we move on with it. And certainly I try to do everything I can to respect what I think is a government above us that would love to open. But they're trying to keep us from being Ontario or California or wherever.
Like
so that's where my mindset is. And so thank you for coming in today.
You're welcome.
Gus Reberger.
I'd like to thank you for coming in and doing this presentation, and you're very articulate. It was very articulate, better than I speak. So you did well.
I know. When
And
I approached my mom, she told me, you didn't write that. I said, Mom, I had help. She's like, there would be a lot more swear words if you wrote it. And I agree. Megan, remember me from school? Yeah, no.
And so I didn't have a haircut, legal or illegal, as you can probably tell. So, but I'm working on it. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, ladies, for coming in. I know it takes a lot of courage to sit in those chairs, and I really appreciate that. The public needs to hear these comments, and I don't know if you know, but we're live streaming, so your first debut. Very good comments.
Okay.
And I just like to echo the comments of Councillor Hill. I'm all about process too, and what you've done is there's a way to advocate, and we have 6 councillors and a mayor here that on a regular council, we only have 5 here now, but we advocate for small business, and all of us, when we're out and about, it's all about small business. And I guess what's upset me a little bit about this whole past week, and it was pretty stressful. It was a bloody gong show.
You got that right.
You know, was we were left with the impression that council didn't support small business, or that's the impression that I had.
Yeah.
And that's not true. We need to support the process, and we can spend some time one-on-one if you wish to talk about that process, or you can spend some time with our CAO, and he can go through that. But the advocate for government at the municipal level is the council. We have a united voice, and we have the ear of the MLAs, the senior politicians. So please, anytime, these doors are open. This is a public forum. We're here to support you. We're employed by you. So please feel free to come at any time and speak to us. So I thank you. I applaud you. Your presentation was articulate, and I got a haircut this morning legally from my hairdresser. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Okay, well.
I don't know who to look at. Who's going to talk next?
And I'm sorry? Oh. No, we certainly hear you, and we will be reviewing the business license thing. I mean, there may be even something in there that says that you must operate your business by all rules of laws and rules of order, maybe to cover this type of thing. But anyways, we'll be reviewing that. And
like I said, I don't think they thought of us as a community.
Yeah.
I don't want to say they were right. I believe they stood up for their rights, but they haven't been here long enough to know how Innisfail operates.
Yeah.
And they didn't go to any other businesses for support. And I mean, the power is in numbers. I think they should have had the numbers behind them. And in her comment about the 80% of supporters, 90% of those people that are on their Facebook page and commenting and stuff aren't even from here. So I don't understand their support behind them.
And you put a comment on there, a bad comment, and it was taken off, right? They kept all the great comments on there.
I think it was done in a very, very reckless way and not thinking about the community at all.
Well, I think you've made your point, and that's good because it will be, we do have some press here. Maybe we'll get some airtime for you there too. But I'm sorry, Mr. Becker.
So I think to the delegation, the council does undertake advocacy lobbying that really a lot of people don't really hear or see.
I don't know what that is.
So the current restrictions, for example, are the ones of last week, now that have changed. So council is in their role primarily to serve the community, but also to speak on behalf of the community for the best interests of the community. So advocacy, so they're speaking to other levels of government for what's best for Innisfail and the region. So council's dialed in. I know the mayor's been on a few calls with the premier and Chief Medical Officer Henshaw. Administration is on weekly engagements with Henshaw, Dr. Henshaw, with other municipal administrations. The Alberta Urban Municipal Association is an organization made up of elected officials, just like we have here. And they're also speaking to government on the best interests of municipalities. So there are different conversations going on that council's part of. So to think that there is not an advocacy or a lobby push by council is not accurate. There is a lot of work being had to understand what's going on locally and moving that forward through to the other levels of government. So sometimes we don't recognize that and we think the community understands it, but we don't speak on that very often. But there are conversations going on. Tomorrow we meet with administration with Dr. Henshaw. We speak largely what's going on with our amenities, recreation facilities, our retail businesses, and we're trying to push her to understand the impacts of those decisions locally. So there are conversations going on is my intent of my point.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whoa.
Would you say hi to your mom for me too?
I will. I definitely will.
I haven't seen
she
her
told me
around
to
for a
phone her
while.
as soon as I leave. So thank you. Do we stay or do we go?
You can stay if you want.
I gotta get back to work. Thank you.
Okay, I think if you want to any discussion on that matter right now, I think the obvious has happened and it's been brought to the surface and have been allowed this group to go back to work. So that's a good news today. Councillor Hill?
Yes, Your Worship. I just think it's just lightly touch base on that. I feel that there is a lot of discussions that happen out in the public, and I definitely feel that that making it very clear that that door is open, and that any issues that as a councillor myself or collectively that does get brought to our attention, having it funneled into this room so it can be really dove into is critical. And I think that process really needs to be emphasized and made sure that people, it's never not been available, but I feel that there's, like you said, that courage to bring forward Councillor Harrison. It is tough, but there's no other way for us to bring it up the ladder to more attention if it doesn't come to us, right? So I just want anyone that is listening to this or whatever it may be, that just coming forward with any issues, whether you're a struggling business or whatever it may be, to do that properly and follow that process.
Yeah, you bet. Any other comments? Okay, well, it's like I say, the good news is they're back to work to some degree, so that's good. All right, next item we have now. Vanessa, did you say you wanted to go to the public for? If there was any comments from the.
If anyone on the Zoom are affiliated with the two ladies that were just here. If there was anything to add, could either just put a quick chat in or put your hand up, or else we'll move on.
Okay. Okay. Doesn't appear. Okay, thank you. Next, we have, I believe, Parkland Planning is here. Do you have a speaker back there, Craig? Megan, were you going to do an introduction for this fellow, or you?
I can just give a brief. Todd sort of did with the addition of the agenda item. So we have Craig Teal with Parkland Community Planning and Greg Smith with Tagish Engineering here to present the draft North Area Structure Plan that they've been working on. Yeah, to give council an overview before we proceed into further public consultation on the plan update. So I'll turn it over to Craig.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, administration. Good to see you again. It must be the mask. That's why you didn't recognize me. Okay, as Megan mentioned, the purpose of today's briefing is really to bring you up to speed on what kind of updates and changes we made to the document. And also it's an opportunity for council to ask any detailed questions, not necessarily make decisions in terms of the overall process. Our next step after this, unless you really, really don't like what you're seeing, is to go out for landowner and public review. And then after that, the document will be brought back by administration for council's formal consideration through first reading and the public hearing process. So I've been told I have to keep it under half an hour. So I'm going to try to do that. And Greg is going to chime in to give me a break from speaking at some points and specifically to talk about some of the engineering. So the good news is I don't plan to go page by page. But in terms of very high level, if you had a chance to read the document, and I don't expect you to have compared it to the previous one, nor am I going to do a comparison with the previous one. It's basically an update of a plan that was originally written back in 2000, 2001, briefly updated 2003, 2004 following annexation, and then basically was doing its job for the last 20 years. The purpose of the update is for a couple of reasons. Number one, typically we talk about reviewing these things every 5 years, but you can see we really stretched this one out and got the town's money for the first couple investments, going to a 20-year period for review. A lot of things didn't change that much. We did add about 3/4 sections of land through annexation. Provincial policies have changed. Some of the development has occurred in the area, and it's interesting to look back and see how much has been. We probably would all like to look back and see that we wish it was more. And the entire gist of the overall plan is to set that framework for the next, say, 20 or 25 years to give landowners that are willing to come forward and start developing their land a framework to understand what the town's expectations are, how our roads, park systems, water, sanitary sewer, storm, all of that fit within their plans. So they then go on and do subdivisions and add housing or industrial and commercial land. So the document itself has been written into two major parts. So that is one of the changes. The first part, what I'm calling part A, is contextual and background. So we did a fair amount of updating of that over 20 years. Provincial policies changed. The town has introduced new plans. For instance, the intermunicipal development plan replaced what used to be the old urban fringe plan from 1998, I believe. So this plan also, we don't get to start with a fresh, clean slate, but that concept, that context in the front half tries to give a sense for the reader at the time that we're updating the plan of what we had as our starting point. That's not live data. We don't update it every year. So if there's a change in policy or we add another 10 houses, we don't come back and update. So that's been put into part A with a clear indication to the reader that that is not really the plan. That's context. This is not policy statements. You can try to make it policy statements, but it's just background context. Part B is a real plan. And more specifically, if it doesn't say policy, it's not policy. So there's still a lot of narrative and talk and discussion that goes in part B to explain concepts such as what do we mean by stormwater looping, or sorry, stormwater management and water looping. what's happening with the sanitary sewer. But when you get right down to it, if it doesn't have a number beside a statement, then it's not a policy. So we're trying to break it up to help the reader understand how we write some of these documents and more specifically how they apply. So I'm going to skip all of part 8. And I should have asked your worship, do you want to take questions at the end, or do you want to go ask them as we go? Or?
I think if we could hold it to the end, it'd be best, but unless there's a real issue there that you want some input from us, I think we can just, you might want to stop for a bit and ask a couple of questions, but it's up to you.
Okay, well, maybe any questions about part 8? Okay, moving on, part B. I'll just try to get to the key document. I promise you I'm not going to go page by page. Go by, of course, I know where it is at the very end. This will be page by page. So I hope you're keeping up. I really want to spend more time on this one. So the land use concept really talks a lot about what are we going to do with the land? And then some of the things that Greg will speak about is how we go about doing it. So there's a tie-in or link with water, wastewater, and stormwater management. So it's a very large area, just a little under 3 square miles. Substantial for the future growth and expansion of the town of Innisfail. It's been a work in progress for many, many years, even before the 2000 plan that I mentioned. So our land use concept really breaks up the area into 3 major parts, starting in the far west, or I guess left-hand side. Your left-hand side? Well, yeah, left edge of the document. Highway 54, extending over the C&E Trail. That's largely the residential component with some significant recreational areas. Through the middle, in between the C&E Trail and Highway 2A and the railway, we have a commercial area. Again, we still have another large, industrial area with a large commercial recreational area, and just north of Johns Manville, that's one of the white cubes. There's not a pointer on this, is there? Right, okay, probably did that before. And then, so that area is industrial with use of municipal water and wastewater. When you get to the triangular area on the far right-hand side of the document, or drawing in between Highway 2A and the QE2, this is the area where we have the existing highway commercial that back in 2000 wasn't there, so that's filled in. And then going north of the Waskesiu Creek, we have an area that's flagged for industrial but has a different approach in terms of policy. So throughout the plan, the entire area is broken up into those 3 major parts. And as you can see, we're trying to accommodate quite a range of uses. Residential and future growth, expanding up to a population of possibly 6,000 to 6,800 people in the future if it's built out at the densities that we're anticipating. Along with that comes an expansion of the open space system. Sometimes that's around an existing pond or a pocket dugout, or it's a planned future space for a school. Through the middle, we're definitely trying to accommodate the industrial and assessment-based growth and the local employment opportunities where we see all that purple and or mauve. And then in the far right, again, we're back to purple and commercial, and trying to, again, accommodate those industrial expansion opportunities, jobs, and assessment-based growth. Not so much on the highway commercial, because we already built out the really good area that has access to municipal water and wastewater and has close access to the interchange. And beyond that, we have just the one local commercial area right on C&E Trail that you can see. Since this plan was originally created, others have gone ahead and made some investments. So one of the things we tried to do when we were updating it was to respect the Hazelwood outline plan that was done in the Hazelwood Estates area by Malibu Communities. And in the Northwest 28, so pretty much right north of Dodds Lake, another significant investment has been made there by the Greenwoods to plan their future development. So there's not a lot of change in those areas, respecting the investments that's been made by those 2 property owners, one of which is very much an active work in progress. The other could start any day. That'd be nice. And then the rest of the area, basically we're setting in place the framework for landowners to come forward and either do a detailed area outline plan, similar to the Hazelwood or the Dodds Lake, if they're on the left-hand side, west end in the residential area. Through the commercial area from the C&E Trail all the way over to the QE2, you see that the patterns change. Not only is it all purple for that industrial use, but you see a lot of dashed lines underneath, and you're seeing a lot more of a grid of a collector road. So there's a little bit more detail in that area. That's because we are anticipating large blocks for industrial land compared to small 50 by 100 foot lots in residential setting. We're looking at starting around the 5 acre plus block. One of the joys about industrial lands, you really never know about the exact size until you have the tenant on the ground. So what we're trying to do in the plan in this case is set up the flexibility where we've communicated what the needs are for road connections, sewer connections, water connections. So those landowners can move, they don't have to go through the outline plan process. They can go right to the subdivision stage because we're dealing with large blocks of land. We still have to ask the same kind of questions when it comes to how are you dealing with your stormwater management? How did Alberta Transportation approve that intersection? But we can skip a step in that respect. So that's why you see a suggested loitering pattern that goes with that grid of roads. If you're going to ask, well, what if they come back and they want a 10 acre block instead of your 5s? Well, you just start lumping them together. What if they come in and say, well, I want a bunch of 2s? Well, you go to the end of one of the blocks, such as the east-west road in between the label Southeast 33 and Northeast 28, and you can easily divide up smaller blocks. So trying to create a bit of a flexible structure there. It will still depend on what the needs are, specifically when someone comes forward with subdivision, but that is one of the major changes in this document compared to the previous one, is trying to introduce a little bit more flexibility and hopefully spur on a little bit more development in that industrial, well, let's say commercial, it's already built, industrial area. The other thing that we are trying to reflect in this is Johns Manville has a sizable field to the north, and they remain interested in still having that sizable field. So we've had to work the road network and the pipe networks on the assumption that they're not interested in going ahead, and those that are willing to go ahead have to work around that. And it is very much possible. So where you see the extension of 42nd Avenue on the right-hand side of Johns Manville's location, so west side of Discovery Wildlife Park, the gray lines are where you might see a collector road if they're actually subdividing, but if they're not, there's a little dashed line to go up and around using what is from an engineering perspective, probably going to be a very challenging little roadway to build because it's a goat trail right now close to the creek and not necessarily the greatest base. But there is a possibility of having a road to go up, tie into the grid, and then start working in the area to the north of Johns Manville without upsetting their plans about wanting to maintain that area for their own long-term needs. When we get to the area to the far east, in between the two highways, you see there's some yellow lines that shape up. And that is basically a recognition of some of the servicing constraints. So this also follows on the 2015 industrial strategy, where we introduced the opportunity of having privately serviced industrial parcels. Now, they still have to be low water users, but there's a lot of industrial that could go into that area that would meet the bill and be able to survive on a private water well and a private sewage system. A bakery, probably not a good example. That'd be a high water user. They should go in the municipal setting. Oil field gas, or oil field service company that only has a handful of staff using washrooms and recycle their truck wash and uses most of their yard for outdoor storage, may qualify as a low volume user. They may be a good candidate in that particular area. So it's a recognition that it's a challenge for us to get in that part of the basin, which was done back in 2015. And this plan picks up that idea and starts laying out some of the expectations. So one of the extra expectations in that area would be, unlike the areas that have municipal water and wastewater, you have to do a groundwater supply study to make sure that the well water can meet your needs without drawing down other people's wells. So let me see, open space, I should touch on that. The Waskesiu Creek is definitely one of the prominent features that you see going through here, and where we anticipate subdivision, we've identified that as open space, similar to the previous plan. So it's still expected to be environmental reserve. The wetlands policy is probably one of the big changes from the previous plan. So there's a lot of small areas that you may look at and say, I don't think that's a wetland. The province may disagree. And unfortunately, that's still an issue that's up in the air for us and the developer until such times as someone does a detailed wetland analysis. Some of the easy ones, for instance, the area up in the Southeast 32, so go up to the golf course and then kind of cut off to up and to the right. There's a big green area beside a storm pond. That's that. If you look at the air photo in the other parts of the plan, you'll see, and you check the contours, you see it drops down 5 meters and there's a body of water at the bottom. Those are the easy ones. The other ones that are not so easy. So there may be other spaces that are not shown on this land use concept that have to be used as open space. And unfortunately, that decision will have to be waiting until someone does a more detailed subdivision plan or outline plan when the time comes. Have I lost anyone yet? Any questions? Okay. So I'm going to ask Greg maybe to quickly go over some of the, sorry, actually one more, and then I'll ask Greg to talk quickly about some of the servicing challenges that and how to work around those. This drawing that we put into a map for a context to basically show that even though this is a sizable area and future growth for the town of Innisfil, it's also not the end of Innisfil's planned future growth and expansion area. So overlaid on the air photo, it's the exact same land use pattern. There's another copy of the air photo if you want to see it kind of easier to see some of the features at the front part of the doc or front of the package of maps. So this shows in between the two highways, or sorry, QE2 on the one hand, the third highway, Highway 2A, and then Highway 54. To the west of 54 is an identified future town growth area into the IDP. We're talking many, many, many years out. And then across the north, you see another strip, 1/4 section wide, also identified in the IDP for future town growth when you get to that point and need it, which is many, many years down. The point being that Innisfil's future doesn't stop just at the north of our plan area. So when you see some of the road connections that are going up, or you see a discussion about a regional sewage system, at some point, some future council and staff will be dealing with, we've grown and it's time to look at that next half-mile wide band. And our job at this stage is to make sure that we don't paint them into a corner in the process. So with that, I'm going to lend the clicker to Greg to see if you'd like to speak to the concept maps. Or you just want to wave at me when you want to go to the next one.
Okay. No, water's perfect. We can start there. I guess the good news overall for water and sanitary is that Innisfil's in really good condition in this way. You've certainly got capacities in both systems to advance growth in the area. So that's always nice to hear for council. So to look at the water plan, it would be serviced from a reservoir 2 and 3 combined. And what we're showing on this map is a conceptual grid that we've done some really conceptual modeling to prove that it works. We'll be using some pressure zones to be able to convert the pressure so that the higher elevation parts aren't too high in pressure, and then we can lower the pressure down as we lower in elevation, kind of move our way towards Waskesiu Creek. To use a couple numbers for you, to start with water supply. So you currently have water supply to take you over 11,000 people in population. So again, that's to note for the entire town growth, not just for this area, but a substantial room in growth for water supply. And then as you near that number, we'd certainly recommend increasing your water supply from Henday, which I think would be a pretty straightforward or like a viable option plan. But again, you have quite a bit of water supply to help initiate growth in this area. Water storage is actually larger. We're looking at almost a population of 19,000 people. So that's again in really a good condition for you. You've got lots of room in water storage. So the difference there being is first you supply the water in from the treatment plant, just to actually consume the water. The water storage then takes in your peaks and your fire flow capabilities and what you need to distribute on the daily. And you've got some really good infrastructure in place that way. As I mentioned, we went through a high-level kind of trunk main network so that we've got some guidance for future developers to follow in that regard, and guidance for town administration to look at and compare their plans. And as I already noted, there's some large valves shown there. They just symbolize where we would put in what are called pressure reducing valves, just to mitigate the pressure between both areas. A couple of special considerations for water would be the solar farm way on the far west. Isn't serviced with water right now. It is a challenging piece of property because it really takes off in elevation in that corner. Kind of nice right now that they're there and it doesn't need to be serviced. So we have identified that it can be serviced with water. It probably, as Craig showed in that last map, would tie into your future growth beyond this boundary and need to be looked at in that regard. There might be some more pumping facilities needed as you start to increase in elevation that largely. If we want to flip Craig probably to sanitary now. So sanitary, also large capacity there for you. All of your sanitary right now goes to where your old lagoon site was. As everybody's well aware, that is now put into a regional lift station and pumped away offsite for treatment. From looking at their documents, you have about 15,000 people population based. I should say too, we convert everything to a population, but in industrial land, we would use an equivalency. So we just look at what a commercial or industrial property might be in relation to population and can kind of keep track of it that way. So again, there's room for substantial growth sanitary wise. Sanitary is a bit more complicated of how to get it back into your system. But there was a CPR dual main sanitary project completed 2014, I believe, which has opened up more capacity to take the sanitary through town. So we are looking at tying into the Hazelwood force main. There will be a lift station required to push it in, and that should take about 143 hectares of growth. And then there are some further developments you can do in town to ultimately build out about 270 hectares of growth. Past that point, we are showing, let me just see how to best describe it to you folks. We've shown one lift station just along the Sini Trail, kind of at the top portion of Northwest 28. And then as development continues to move to the north and towards the creek, we have shown another lift station between Southwest 33 and, Southeast 33 and Southwest 34. And you can see a red dot and then a line goes north off the map. Potentially at that point, that could be a good location for another regional lift station. We are getting quite a ways out in years of growth, so you'll certainly have time to look at that, whether that's the ideal location for that, and start to think of some of the growth, as Craig mentioned, that comes off the map in other areas. But both for water and sewer, I guess I would reiterate that there's certainly capacity for growth in both systems to allow growth in this area. And the sanitary here would just be lifted back into town. There may be some temporary lift stations needed before a bigger, larger communal lift station can be used, but that would be getting into the details of development with that.
So Greg, the sanitary then it's all scheduled to any lift stations up there will all funnel over through the Hazelwood subdivision. Is that the only force main, or?
That's correct. Yeah, there could be a small portion that could come back in, but the condition of your existing lift stations kind of in the immediate south, and the capacity isn't as great. Your best capacity is through Hazelwood, and then it comes down, follows that yellow line that kind of comes along on the east side of Napoleon Lake.
Get over there. Okay.
So just to put that in context, though, that's probably enough capacity with some of the downstream changes that Greg has mentioned to deal with 4 of the 7 quarter sections that are up there for development. And then the remaining 3, you have to crack how to deal with the first 4 before you really have a problem with the remaining 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So substantial. Yeah. The storm is it's next. So what we did here is we looked at the existing contours and tried to make use. It's quite a potholed piece of land, as everybody's aware. So as much as we could, we identified areas that were already maybe wetlands already, or at least low areas that could be converted into storage. And then what would happen is they would have to connect to one another ultimately to Waskesiu Creek as an outlet. Through our work with Alberta Environment and other areas in the region, we are recommending a 2.5 liter per second per hectare release rate. That just helps provide guidance in this area for administration to look at proposed plans that are coming due. And we know that this rate is widely recognized in this area from Alberta Environment, so it should make the approval process. The wetlands and the environmental considerations still certainly need to be considered as people are looking at converting that land into development. Just be a little too far out to take that on this large scale of a plan at this point in time.
So I do have a question.
Sorry, Gavin, go ahead.
That 2.5 release rate, where would that occur? And if that isn't enough, what floods?
Okay. So the 2.5 liters per second per hectare is kind of how the storm pond is sized. So that should come out of the outlet of the pond. That's the one in northeast 28. Actually, it would be all of those ponds. All those little blue areas, and it's tough to see, but the little circle says inside storm in there, are proposed to be different ponds. And that 2.5 liter per second rate makes the ponds large. It's very similar to a lot of the other municipalities and even some of the ponds that you've seen recently developed in your town. So it is really very much Alberta Environment's response to flooding is that they're.
So you might have to alternate, like letting some of one and then another one, or.
It's a little too early to say that. That's not where this is, but that rate creates a large pond to provide ample storage for those flooding scenarios. And then each pond would have to have an emergency flood way probably to the next one. But the idea is to try and take, as we all know, Waskesiu Creek floods regularly. So the ponds are going to be that buffer. And so that's what they have to restrict to. So for example, developed land can come into a pond at 25 to 30 liters per second per hectare. And then you're retaining and only allowed to let 2.5 out, and you have to store that difference.
So just to add to that, Your Worship, when we talk about how much land is needed to accomplish what Greg has just described, one of the things we did this plan was we tried to size all the blue cubes that you see up here to what we think the amount of land is going to be that's needed to do that. Because then the developer then has a better understanding of how much is left for residential or industrial to actually pay the bills. So unfortunately, the pond is something that it takes land. You can't sell it as industrial parcel, but it is part of the critical infrastructure necessary without flooding our neighbors downstream.
I had one question. Are we limited? Do we have to deal with the stormwater drain all through there as part of Waskesiu, or it's not Waskesiu Creek until it gets to the Waskesiu Creek, right? So it's just a drainage channel that can be manipulated a little more than a creek can be, I guess is what I'm thinking. Is there less limit or less regulation to putting in ponds or bigger ponds or little or?
There is. I'll give the planner's response, and then Greg will tell me how bad it was. So in terms of the creek manipulation, you can manipulate creeks, just be prepared to do a ton of paperwork. Yeah. So in this particular case, we're not planning to manipulate any creeks. It's a named creek, it's a water body, and we're getting more and more protective of those. And Waskesiu, actually, it's also important to remember that the basin for Waskesiu Creek is huge. Even though Indusel has a tendency to take the brunt of the blame for the water, it's not all coming from the town of Indusel. The drainage course that leads from Dodds Lake is a good example where if it's not a named creek, we still have to be able to allow the natural flow of water, and we actually have manipulated it quite heavily. It doesn't usually do those nice 90-degree bends that you see on the map. It does a more diagonal, but we're trying to fit in these big rectangles for industrial parcels. So we are counting on some manipulation of that. So long as the water can still go through and we have the storage capacity that Greg's mentioning, and you don't flood people downstream of Waskesiu Creek, you can do that. One of the reasons on why there's so many little dots everywhere as opposed to just one big pond in one location is two things. A little bit of fairness amongst landowners. So, and just practicality. So if there's 8 landowners up there and you're number 8 and you're told we're going to take half of your quarter section for the storm ponds of everyone else, you can probably guess how that conversation is going to go. So you can take that policy approach. The problem is that it's very, very difficult to implement. even this one with each quarter section by and large on their own, responsible for looking after their own needs and releasing to their neighbor for a controlled release rate, we're still going to hear, well, staff will hear when the developers come forward, if they do an outline plan of, can we make that storm pond smaller? Boy, that takes a lot of land. But at least we're not dealing with that equity issue between all the landowners at once, just to deal with the first proposal out the gate. So I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that, or.
No, it's a good answer. Yeah. To maybe just add a little bit to your original question, Jim, is the creeks are named creeks, so they're governed differently. Wetlands and then unnamed water courses is what they would be called. So kind of low areas that you see water flow through regularly, but they dry up, typical to any farmer's field, would follow more of the wetland regulation. So they can be studied. There can be compensation if they're deemed environmentally significant, but it does give the developer more latitude to work with it within their property. Didn't really have more to say on storm. So at that point, there is transportation, I think, left, which ties into really, Craig had given a bit of an overview before. We're certainly utilizing Highway 54, Scenic Trail, and Highway 2A. And then we've tried to provide a pretty good connection, also limiting the amount of crossings across Waskesiu Creek, because they would obviously come with a bridge or a bridge-sized culvert, which adds to cost. A little bit of the challenge what we've tried to do is show an alternate to Scenic Trail where it comes into town and around to maybe promote truck traffic from not going through your existing residential area. But I believe that also depends on some negotiations with Johns Manville. Is that correct, Craig?
Yes, it would actually. It skirts the very west end of their property for a portion there.
So we're just, I think it would be a good alternative, but it does, yeah, it does require some work with them on that front. Other than that, we've tried to provide the road network, and then any of the local roads, especially in the residential area, would come forward from the developers themselves. So that allows that flexibility Craig was talking about earlier on how they want to lay out their lots and what they think is marketable.
I think the first one to hit us is probably going to be that portion north of Hazelwood, just to go up to that future school site and across over to
it is and
C&E.
Your worship, that issue, so that starts popping up once we laid out what we will do long term. So that's what all the map does and the concepts do. Certainly a large part of the text does. When we get into the implementation section, we do flag that issue of secondary access that hasn't gone away just because we updated the plan. And we've carried forward the same threshold, which is largely the self-imposed threshold of 200 housing units on a single access point. And we're closing in on that. And so that challenge hasn't gone away. The plan, though, does give us the concept of what pieces do we need next to really open up the area to be able to keep going. So that secondary road access for Hazelwood, and the school, if that timing is, I guess we got a little bit of a reprieve in the last year and a bit. But eventually you're going to get to that point and need a solution, or it'll be a decision of council whether or not you want to zone and go on to 201 plus housing units. Some of the other things that we briefed up in the implementation stage, our part is trying to explain a little bit more what we mean by an outline plan. What kind of engineering support studies do we need? We haven't done a traffic impact assessment with Alberta Transportation. In the next round, if going out for public review, they'd be asked to comment on that. We're hoping that we've honored their expectations along Highway 2A in particular in terms of spacing of intersections, but they may yet come back and ask for more traffic impact assessment as part of this exercise, or just deal with it on a subdivision by subdivision basis. The implementation section gives you also some explanation of how you interpret some keywords, what will means compared to may or should. So some policies are very firm, must happen. Others have a little bit more latitude and flexibility for council to apply. We also try to clarify throughout the text and in the implementation, some of the things that you're seeing up here are conceptual. There's a lot of room for fine tuning, especially when we're talking about wetlands and additional assessments. They may come, they may go. And you can even see the disclaimer text off in the right-hand corner on that particular drawing is you don't do detailed engineering off this. You get out the surveyor and you do more detailed work then. If you want to know if you're far enough back from the creek for your environmental reserve and your setback, you don't just scale it off this map. You check that in the field. This plan, this map gives you a general direction of what we're expecting to look for. But then the developer, who hopefully is going to make some money doing this, still has to put up the monies to do those detailed studies. That's part of the cost of being inland development. It's not a cheap hobby. It does take work to do it properly. So all of that, the last thing I'm going to flag in the implementation section is if there's any questions about interpretation, two things actually. That question could go back to council for interpretation. Was that supposed to be a 20-meter wide strip of green, or is that supposed to be a 40-meter wide strip of green? Those sort of things. And the other is, especially given the 20-year gap for review, I suggested maybe a 10-year review this time around. Maybe a little bit more realistic and achievable. That being said, council at any point, it's your plan. If you want to direct a review at any stage, you can do so. So that's in the tail end of the document. You would actually need to flag some new things and new ideas that came up. And Megan, you may have to chime in and help me out on this. In housing, we already had a maximum density of 16 units per hectare. What we've suggested there for sustainability and the efficient use of land and trying to achieve some of the things we'd like to see, that there be a minimum floor, a minimum density of around 12.5 units per hectare. So that's just a sliver higher than what you're seeing in the Hazelwood area right now. And there's lots of ways you can go about doing that. So the mixture of housing, those kind of expectations, we've tried to add policy about that in the housing stage. If you have a long road like 58th, which runs almost a mile from north to south, you don't have to have the same housing types down that entire segment just because you're still on 58th Street. You can break it up. You can add variety. You can go on a block by block basis. You can make points of transition. Maybe one segment of that street is row housing. Another segment is back to detached with a garage. So you can use those kind of techniques to create some variety in the housing that you're trying to accommodate. We certainly do talk about there's no one size house if it's all household needs. So we have to be prepared for that too. Population, especially after the last year and a bit, we may see even further changes in housing preferences and what households are looking for. The other thing we've tried to put in is a policy that other municipalities have been using for social housing. So recognizing that occasionally there may be a public sector need be for things such as maybe a hospice or a daycare or a adult living care center. That social care housing idea is each developer, as you bring on your new neighborhood with 600 plus housing units, we're asking or suggesting the policy is set aside the equivalent of 3 parcels to give that group first dibs. It doesn't mean it's free land, but it's an opportunity to say the site's available, advertise, put it to the market, see if there's an interest. And if there's no take up, well, then you can convert it. But trying to give those people, those social housing or social care housing agencies and that need an opportunity to get into some of these new neighborhood areas. I think that is it for the new, we certainly recognize the solar power plant. Our solar generation facility in 2044 already seems like it's not that far away, but it is. On the commercial front, there's not really a lot
if I could just interrupt again, because you're kind of getting away from it now, but just to comment back to the second access to Hazelwood again.
Yes.
I think, and again, I live there, but I do think that we're feeling that already. I think administration right now is studying some of the traffic flows down, what is it, 56th? Because that's where it naturally goes, I guess, and it splits. And so I just wanted to raise that we are feeling it, I think, now.
Yeah, and we're very close at the 200 mark.
Yeah, I bring that up for when you actually made a comment, maybe we would decide to go higher. I think at some point the pressure's getting there.
Yeah, the people along 56 are starting to, it's a pretty real narrow street and we're getting a lot of comments there.
I'm trying to think 56 as in closer from the Kemp House onwards. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, because we changed up the traffic.
The extra is showing there. So they're asking people to go around.
Yeah. In some ways, the reason why we pulled the road network into that established area, the built area, we didn't stay in the plan area. Everything else pretty much stops at the edge of the plan boundaries, was to show some of those road connections so that we think about them. So especially if we add a lot of employment area, 6,800 people, there are going to be intersections and areas off-site that feel those pinches. And I'm not sure if you're still doing a periodic traffic count program. Okay. So that will bring you the data from time to time. It's not something you need to look at every single year, but we do acknowledge in the plan that there may be those things that have to take into account. Certainly that's if the need to update some of those intersections. Hopefully they're all flagged in the offsite levies, so the money's there. If there's a key one that has to be switched over to lights, the development that's driving it will hopefully have contributed some of the funds to do that. The question is all the timing, and that's the more difficult part for us to really peg, and which is why any plan that goes over a 25-year to 30-year period, there's always a degree of monitoring that goes with. Don't just blindly follow it. It gives you a good starting point to work within, but you still have to manage decisions as they come.
So I guess
long-winded answer to your question.
One last point related to that area was I did do my reading, and
there's an open book test after.
Well, I might not have got it all. Okay. The golf course currently, I believe, pumps water into Mud Lake and irrigates out of it. I think it comes from the Red Deer River, Jim, or Mr. Rumble. And I think I saw something later in the text that said that perhaps some of this drainage could end up going to the golf course for irrigation. I just wanted to bring it up that they do use a lot of water. Like that thing fills up, it's down in a couple of days and they're pumping in, from normal.
Yeah, it's I think that wouldn't be a tough one, but it is possible with some of the hills and valleys that Greg was mentioning, there may be some local stormwater that can be directed.
Right.
The vast majority of the topography is kind of working against them in that respect. Okay, so some of the other things, industrial land use, we put in some more policies about appearance along the major highways. So some of that, they're not new ideas per se, they just start tying back into things that were already in the land use bylaw or general expectations. On page 27, if you did your reading, you will find a page on eco-industrial. So that is certainly something that's very new. It does lean towards the environmental side. And it's fair to say that we do a good job planning industrial parks on everyone on their own parcels, stay within your fence until you come out in the public road and you're all one building, one parcel. Eco-industrial challenges that in terms of trying to transmit a waste product from one industrial enterprise over to another industrial enterprise, which may view that as an input. So one person's waste water that's heated to super boiling becomes an input for another industrial product. What that means is more things than we're used to cross property lines, men may have to cross roads. And until they actually come forward with proposals, it's really hard to guess what they are. So this general gist in here is to say, we're open to that. If someone wants to come forward and within one of these purple areas, purposely say, take a 40-acre block and say, I'm going to try to target this and set up that kind of arrangement. It may mean that there are some certain rules and town guidelines or bylaws or policies elsewhere that may need to bend to make that happen. That's a lot easier to do later on when you're having more detailed decisions than guessing about what they might be up front. But that's a general gist that you're seeing on that page. It's not to say that you're going to get an industrial park, but if someone is interested in that prospect, they know at least that there's a willingness to talk about it. Any questions about that concept? Or I should maybe I'll backtrack. Any questions about the social housing, social care housing? Okay. Beyond that, wetlands, I think we've talked a fair amount about that. There's two policies that don't come from the wetland policy that we put in here. Wetlands get graded from A, B, C, and D. A and B being the highest ones of value and C and D being lower ones. What I'm suggesting in the policy is that you don't bother having a developer dedicate the ones that are rated C and D as environmental reserve. The developer still has to do some assessment and work, and to get rid of those wetlands, they have to pay compensation to replace them elsewhere. But the A's and B's are the higher compensation ones and are most likely to also have a water body associated with it. So those are the ones that are probably more meaningful to pursue as part of your permanent natural open space area and retain in their natural state. whereas a season D's could literally be a depression that's there for a part of the season in the farmer's field. Okay. Beyond that, the environmental reserve policies are as easy to read as ever, which I'm sure you'll enjoy. Well, okay, so that's those are the ones I wanted to highlight. The rest is, you know, they're recognizing that the roads are conceptual, that we need roads. There's a trail system identified. Your Worship, I'd be happy to field any questions that anyone may have from the readings of the plan.
Yeah, Your Worship, I have one through to Craig. It's regarding the IDP on the north and the west sides. When does that discussion start with the, I guess it would be the county?
In some ways, that discussion is kind of an ongoing one. So I think if I recall from 2006 plan, you should have at least one annual meeting, but staff may have to help me on what's going on. There you go.
We are in the process of working on a draft update for the IDP with the county. Yeah, it was probably, I think it was February of last year was when we met with the county. And we've been working on a draft update because our existing IDP, like Craig mentioned, is from 2006. So it's a little dated as well. So
okay.
that plan will be forthcoming this year.
Okay, so the two are intertwined. Like during these updates, we talk about sort of what our long-term vision is here. Is that?
Yeah, certainly they are intertwined. So in terms of the hierarchy of plans, when you say which plan trumps which, the IDP is up here, then there's the MDP, and then there's this plan that we're working on.
Okay.
So if there was a direct conflict with what's in the IDP, for instance, if the IDP said north of the golf course, that's supposed to be industrial, the IDP would win, and we shouldn't be adopting this plan. Okay, so that's how that's what we mean by plan consistency and how they work together. One of the process steps, the county is, this nature of plan is definitely one of the kind of documents that gets circulated to the neighbor for their comments. Okay. And we did that in the initial referral stage many months ago. And most municipalities, when they're reviewing them, put more effort into the drafts when it comes out for comments. So I'm expecting a little bit more back from the next round.
Okay, thank you.
So when I was doing my homework and reading through this last night, I was confused by the new access road on the west side of Manville that goes up there, because it calls it 48th Street. And if it's going north and south, shouldn't it be an avenue? And then I came down here and I looked at the map in front of me and it's labeled as 48th Street. And I'm wondering if maybe the previous manager of planning mislabeled this map and it's carried through into this whole program.
Nope.
Just an observation. Should that not be 48th Avenue? I think it lines up with 48th Avenue.
I think I had to go back and check that. But years and years and years before I ever started helping with the town, it was already, unfortunately, a decision that had been made. It is a weird one. And you're right, it's not in keeping. The pain in switching it, I'm not sure is worth it, to be honest. Because you have to go to all the other from Lafarge down and tell them, hey, we have to change your address, your mailing and everything. And
there's nobody on there, is there?
Yeah, Lafarge.
Well, Lafarge, I guess. Okay, yeah, there's a few business, but are they? Is it just a mistake on this map, or is it?
No,
or is it actually?
No, it's all the maps are lining up correctly. It's 48th Street.
Really?
Yeah. So, yeah. There's another one that actually did give me more grief. It's actually just in the same vicinity. Everyone knows where Nova Park is. Everyone knows where the Legion's building is. And you can see right there on the graphic, there's a little strip road that doesn't exist that's going through. That's Chester Street. Keeps popping up every now and then on the maps. You have to beat it down.
Your Worship, through to Craig, with respect to land going out on C&E, I know there's some for sale signs on each side of the road, or there was. Mm-hmm. And I guess from a town's perspective, to encourage maybe some industrial development, or would you typically see a municipality get at least services out there, or do you like this chicken or the egg, right? Somebody I was talking to said, well, it's going to be a tough time because developers want to see some services there, and as opposed to them maybe purchasing, and then we're kind of backtracking and trying to get our end done. So.
Yeah. So a lot of times things going really, really well. We always talk about this orderly, contiguous development, and the infrastructure always expands with us. And that's great if I have a theoretical flat plane like this. But your topography, it's not. It's varied. So that is a municipal policy. A council can choose whether or not you want to front end offsite infrastructure to facilitate opening up certain service basins. And in some ways, that's kind of the decision that was made around the Woodlands lift station, all told, when it gets to that point and you have people that are hopefully willing, ready to go. That didn't pan out quite the way I had hoped about 6 years ago, but 6, more than 7, 8. In the overall context of 32 plus years in the Woodland area, that's not that much, but you're going to hear that. And actually, there's a little bit about that in the industrial strategy as well that council looked at, in terms of if you're coming in, and it is contextual, it does depend on the nature of the project. So if you're showing up and you're offering 1,000 jobs, that's a very different conversation than I'd like to speculate and maybe get an RV storage compound. Right. So it's there's no nice clear cut answer. Every developer, I don't blame them. They're gonna ask, is there any financial help that you're prepared to put on the table to help me get my project off the ground, and then hopefully grow your assessment base and achieve your goals and ends? And the question for council will be, from time to time, to what extent are you willing to partner in those kind of arrangements?
Well, that's why I think if we do look at creating that road coming out of Hazelwood over the CME, put that in and service it, it's going to encourage development.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, Your Worship, before I come back to your thought, I just one last thing I do want to point out for the ASP. Even though we talk a lot about a lot of things in this plan that will ultimately lead to capital funding and someone's money is getting spent, there's no obligation for spending in the document. So we try to clarify that as well. You still make your budget decisions as you go on an annual basis. And sometimes people, they forget that part when they read these plans. And that's why we try to put it in very black and white, clear lettering. You're right, Your Worship, in terms of how to crack open the area. Once we understand what we want to build, that's where it comes back to some of the servicing concepts. And along that same alignment, that's where you also find that lift station. It's not just the road, it's about the lift station as well, and getting to a lower point that opens up enough area for maybe some residential and industrial, or just, well, could be just residential, depending on where you put the lift station. Could be residential and industrial if you put some of if you put it farther over to the east. But that, of course, makes the challenge that much more big and larger to get over the initial hurdle. And also in the back, you want to make sure that you have landowners that are actually going to go ahead and do something. That's so we do have, just not to point fingers at them, but your neighbor to the south, Bowden, did a large exercise many years ago to annex land on the east side of the QE2. So, and there's 2 quarter sections there that could be industrial, commercial. And they put in the expense and they extended water and sewer, I think, to the west edge of the QE2. They didn't quite drill it under, as far as I know. And so they did what they had hoped would spur on the development. And it just hasn't occurred yet.
Northwest 28, is that still largely owned by the Greenwoods?
As far as I know. Yes, as far as I know, that we've not approved any other subdivisions, so it should all still be one block, including the existing farmstead.
Is northeast of 29, is any portion of that available, or is that tied
up? Its ownership is a private development company, so I guess if it's available, we'd have to. Yeah. Yeah, all the land, with the vast majority of the land, is privately owned by some entity or another. The town holdings are actually the southwest, the orangish Southwest 33 in the far north, That's the, and 4 lots, just 4. 4 in Hazelwood, down from 6. Is that right? I think, yeah.
Next steps.
Okay, so yes, just if your council is comfortable with what you see, and bear in mind that you do have another kick at this when it comes through for the formal review process. It's still in draft. It remains in draft until such time as it becomes proposed and before council. So our next step would be to put it out for public review. It's probably fair to say our original game plan in the proposal of doing open houses has been out the window. So probably the other hand is probably has some time to play with. So probably that's February and March open house, public review, referral to the agencies, including your neighbor Red Deer County, with the view of having a summary and possibly coming back to council late April, early May, if that fits your schedule. It's a relatively leisurely schedule.
So Craig, just on the landowners, do we talk to them directly or?
Yes, and actually that's part of the proposal. I have 2 that have been waiting anxiously to see a draft. I'm surprised I'm not getting emails in. I did ask them to touch base with me sometime in January. And yes, the major landowners, not necessarily every lot owner in Hazelwood, but if you're one of the large blocks of land and we know how to get a hold of you, I think most of this has been via mail still. They will definitely be given a chance to know where to find a copy of the plan, and certainly invited to provide their feedback and input to us. Mostly this is probably heading for a Zoom online open house type meeting, but we have yet to hammer out exactly those kind of details. More to follow.
Your worship, through to Craig, I know this is just the north area structure plan, but do you feel that the town has the right mix of industrial and commercial? Like, I know we've got the south end of town, the Hawkesby property that runs down Highway 2 there. But I guess trying to look out 10, 15, 20 years, do you feel that there's enough commercial? Like around, yeah. I guess I just see this a lot of purple here. Of course, we're only looking at one end of town, but
we are, and this is actually, I'm trying to think. I think this still rivals the Southwest in terms of sheer size, and certainly you're bringing more on with the former sewage lagoon. Eventually, when council's ready to facilitate that, so you do have industrial land to play with. Highway commercial, yeah, that is one of the ones, like serviceable, meaningful highway commercial, I think, is one of the challenges. And you already do see that in the quarter section that you've been flagged. It's not that we don't have it shown on a map where they can put it close to the south interchange. The challenge is getting the costs relative to what people are prepared to pay and servicing in some cases. So even going to that south end, once you cross Highway 54, we know we face another servicing constraint. It's pretty carved up around the storage compound and around the two streams, branches of Buffalo Creek. Definitely a lift station. And it's difficult to get a bunch of landowners that are already fragmented to work together and share those costs, which kind of leads back to your other question about one of the reasons why sometimes there has to be a municipal intervention to make something happen, or it just sits there and doesn't go anywhere because no one can agree. The only difference between that area and this area is there's still large blocks of land, and we're trying to get out ahead of them to say, here's what the expectation is. But still, each of them could largely, to some extent, work independently until we get into that same sewage problem. So I think long-term, good spots for highway commercial are already taken up. It's always difficult to, and there's lots of tea leaf looking right now at what's the future of commercial. You don't need to build another office to save your life, is what some people are saying, and others are saying, no, it'll all come back. Time will tell. But if you were to look at where would we put the next grocery store, if Innisfail is getting to the point where we can accommodate a full service third grocery store, you wouldn't have that much really good shopping locations. I think you'd barely fit something in your own commercial property on the west end at the 15,000 square foot range, I think is what that tops out as. Okay, so that's still the size of a Sobeys going into a community the size of Innisfail for the first time. That's it. You got one location. There's nothing really left in what we call Wesley Leslie's commercial area. There's redevelopment, which is always difficult. So there are some underutilized parcels down the 2A that could be looked at. But first you have to buy out and assemble and potentially deal with environmental constraints. There's always something from greenfield to brownfield. It's always a slightly different challenge. The Oxby area, if the Woodlands lift station was coming online, that would certainly help part of that servicing. And there's a sizable 10 to 15 acre block. Does that sound right, about right? On the north side for the Oxby's. Yeah. So that could very much be a candidate for that same sample grocery store I was using. I doubt Extra Foods or No Frills is going to let another grocery store go next door to them. They too have lands that are surplus to their needs that would qualify as a bit of infill, but maybe not a direct competitor.
Sorry.
Oh, there it goes. Sorry, I guess one thing you learn sitting on council, things take a lot of time, right? To like this kind of thing is not immediate for sure. And I guess when you think of the growth or potential growth here, that you know, yeah, we may have land in the south end, or we may have down in the southwest corner on a piece of property we have, but you're now starting to scatter things around again, as opposed to kind of that condensed. Here we are downtown along where the co-op is and the West Leslie property and everything. There's this commercial all through there, but now we take it, we break it up and put it at the other end of town. And so a grocery store like a Friesen Brothers, for example, I'll throw it a different name, comes in, or just start a rumor, maybe they're listening. But, you take somebody like that and you're right, like you start thinking, where would somebody like that go? And does it make sense from a planning perspective to put them out at the far end of town? And
it's all relative, I think. And I do like downtowns. there is a role for that, and that's always going to be part of the mix. But not everything's going to be able to find a home in downtown. And the other aspect of we could look to our neighbor to the north of what happens with downtown if you try to force things regulatory to go in downtown, and you have a neighbor that's prepared to accommodate. And even Greg's office left downtown Red Deer and went out to Gasoline Alley. And so that's the kind of framework they have to look at. It's almost more of, you have to have that working relationship with your rural or your neighbor, especially if they have highway commercial lands that could be available. There's only a certain amount of regulation, what it will get you. There's a certain amount you'll be able to get by incentives and carrots and trying to create different character. And the other aspect is you're trying to be open for business and attract more, as opposed to just the narrow segment that may fit in only one particular setting. So we have to be prepared to accommodate, in my view, highway commercial, the traditional. Although as much as I'd like to see less automobile use and more foot traffic to get to some of these things, there's probably room to improve that. And still be prepared to accommodate traditional downtown, because that's still important to us and part of the character and how we view the community.
Your worship, to Craig, what's the role of the MDP in that visionary piece?
Okay, certainly it would, a lot of the policies that you see here at the ASP are aspirational, and the MDP is the opportunity to fill in a large part of that as well. And instead of just concentrating on one part of the community in terms of detailed land use, it looks at it overall broad structure. So if you wanted to say there's going to be an area dedicated for expansion of the downtown versus balancing the highway commercial nodes and industrial areas, that's the MDP is really the better tool for that. This plan is building on that one. So in terms of that split that I mentioned from using the C&E trail, that is a long established split out of the MDP, and that MDP is from, it's actually hard for me to put a date on it. I think it's the core of the concept maybe from the 1980s with minor updates in the 1990s and then minor tweaking to 2007. So that's really your best opportunity for a big discussion about what do you want to be as a community? And Todd's already started answering his question by using the word vision. That's really the best plan to have that conversation. And it goes, despite the fact that it fits in kind of partway through in the plan hierarchy, it helps you lay out the big picture for doing these more detailed plans. It also helps you lay out the picture of what do you want to do for your community when you sit down and update that IDP with your neighbor and understand where your needs lie and what you're going to ask of them to accommodate your future expansion and growth, even though the IDP is theoretically a higher order plan. So that hopefully answers most of your question.
Open house.
Probably my best guess, since I have to, number one, I have to get through January. So it's probably some of these things you won't see hitting the website and set up until the first part of February. I'm going to guess probably the tail end of February, early March.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any big, well, there may be things to dodge to work around.
Hopefully we've got some room in the COVID limitations for.
Unfortunately, Your Worship, for that, it'll be whatever rules we see on the plate, probably that first week of February will probably be the ones that, it's just by the time we advertise, it's too late to kind of turn the ship.
Yeah.
And it's sending out a whole bunch of canceled notices is actually not that great a thing to be doing either. So,
yeah. Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Teal? No. Thanks, Greg and Craig. Interesting. Hopefully we can see some need in that direction here before.
As I was prepping this morning, I was thinking, yeah, how much stuff did happen? I said it's 20 years, but maybe a quick inventory while we still have that map up. Over the course of, from 2000 onwards, oops, yes, it's not a clicker, or it's not a pointer. Starting in the west, the golf course expanded from 18 holes to 19 holes. That was a function of the previous iteration of this plan and the annexation. Once the town got over the issue of Upland Aspen and getting the services to the edge of this plan area, which is what that project did to bring that trunk up from 60th, that's what made it possible for someone to buy, I'm going to draw a blank on the gentleman's name. Wes, he's another Wes.
Campbell?
No.
Oh.
Turn it. Rolling, exactly, yes. So the Rolling holdings were the first urban residential expansion that was able to get into that area, which has now grown to 156 houses. The country residential in the ski hill that you already see was there at the time that the town annexed it. So as we move a little further on, Discovery Wildlife Park was not there back in 2000.
No.
And that was a significant economic development initiative to attract that from the Clive area to come set up here. And it certainly has grown quite a bit over the years. When we go around the corner from that, all of that commercial in the Wesley Leslie subdivision wasn't there, which took a few years, but maybe there's 2 parcels left. I haven't done a head count going through there lately, but so there has been some growth. I don't want to, and it's easily just kind of creeps up on you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Greg.
Thanks, guys.
Have we had any more, heard any more from the Catholic school?
No, we have not.
Yeah.
He just said he was more than a half an hour.
Packed in a lot in 30 minutes.
You don't say.
15 minutes next time, Megan.
No, well, there's interesting to get an update.
Supposed to be about 30 minutes, Your Worship. Just kidding.
Little, we knew.
Just quickly, I'm fairly.
Anyways, let's move on to.
I thought you already did.
Administration. Did you have something else to say? Oh, I'm sorry. 4.1.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Just quickly go through some of the highlight areas for mandatory restrictions, which will lead into the next item on the agenda with recreation facilities. But as we know, indoor social gatherings, public, private, are being prohibited. People who live alone can have up to 2 close contacts. It must be the same 2 contacts. Outdoor social gatherings are limited to 10 people max with proper social distancing. With wedding ceremonies, 10 people max, and funeral services, 20 people max, masking with the 2-meter distancing. Just in regarding the town, the recreation facilities remained closed. The Twin Arenas Pool LLC, as we know, the library is still maintaining operations, but closed to general public. Internally, we have staff working on a rotation and or from home, administratively more than anywhere else. From the retail side, as we know, there's been some recent changes. Customer capacity is maintained at 15% of fire code capacity. Restaurants, bars, pubs, lounges, etc., remain closed and can offer takeout. All recreation-related activity, entertainment gyms remain closed. And personal wellness services, as what we heard with our delegation, open by appointment only. And outdoor recreation facilities such as the outdoor arenas can be used with 2-meter distancing as well. So just generally, updates, we're monitoring week by week what's happening on the other restrictions associated with the other businesses and of course our facilities as well. That's my report.
Okay, have you had any heads up on anything, any other changes to the limitations this week? And
Your Worship, tomorrow we'll hear from Dr. Hinshaw. Municipal administration throughout Alberta will meet with her online, and hopefully we'll have some sort of update tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. One thing I'll have to see, I didn't realize is the single people that can have 2 people, 2 appointees, whatever. I thought that was just a temporary thing at the holiday season. That's still on. That's still in place.
Correct.
Okay, good. Oh, that's great. It never just occurred to me that I thought that was just a Christmas thing, holiday season.
Your Worship, I think it cycled. That was before Christmas, and then they allowed a little deviation from that, and now we're back to it, I think is how it's gone.
Yeah, I think you can have 2 people, but nobody in the house. So you can have 2 people you go do something with, but not inside your own residence.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think it's changed much. I think the difference was at Christmas, you could go to somebody's place.
Yeah.
If they were in your bubble.
Right. Okay. Okay. Any questions of CAO? No. Okay. Would someone like to move? We accept his report.
I'll move that we accept that report for information.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right. Rec facilities operations.
So we had this, and certainly Megan and staff, please chime in as well. But this was on the agenda, tagged with anticipation that we'd be going back into the facilities. We left it on the agenda just for some more detailed dialogue. Right now, we are getting approached by the different users of the Twin Arenas on perhaps of extension or traditional use of. So what I'd like to do is get some direction on through to Megan on how you wish to proceed in having those engagements with those users. Even if it opens up, the facilities open up next week or the week after, there is going to be some requests on extension of seasons perhaps, or I guess I'm just looking for some direction on how you wish to proceed with that dialogue. So for example, the bigger users, minor hockey, for your skating may come to you. How about extension of the season, which traditionally through policy is completed by the end of March. We also know that Tournament Champions is early April. It's big hockey tournaments that uses both arenas. But we also have at least one arena, I guess. And then we also have the Lacrosse Association that'll also use the facility for preseason training before outdoor is ready. So we have a lot going on. Community Services Standing Committee over the last several years, I know, have evaluated the lacrosse demands versus tournament champion demands. Do you want those respective organizations to come before you, or do you want them to go through the Community Services Committee to filter that level of dialogue onto you as advisory? So Megan, do you have anything more to add into that, or?
Yeah, not so much, but we have already had the inquiries from both ends, whether it's the ice users to potentially extend or the dry users to potentially move up their season if ice were to be taken out early. As Todd mentioned, our policy right now for facility booking is that ice is until the end of March and then you switch. So we've sort of been sticking to that at this time, with the caveat that depending on provincial restrictions. But it is a conversation that's probably going to keep coming up in the next few weeks.
Yeah. We haven't, there hasn't been any financial commitment on the users through the restriction areas.
No, Your Worship. That's the other part is this is the draw on resources without use of the facilities.
Yeah.
So that's the pressure municipal administration is putting on Dr. Henshaw is you need to know that this is a significant cost to municipalities when you're not allowing people into our arenas and we're maintaining a high expense with the ice being maintained.
Your Worship, through to Todd, I guess full confidence in the committee, but at the same time, I almost want to say I'd like them to come before council, because I almost feel at times that there's this, that people think that maybe we're not advocating. I think you mentioned it today when Kristen and Donna were here, and we want every opportunity to advocate on behalf of our community. I understand this afternoon at 4 o'clock, there was going to be a demonstration outside Devin Dreeshen's office from hockey people in the community. And so it looks like, you know, we're not getting that information. Maybe doesn't look like we care, and we do, and we want to hear from people. And I want to hear what can we do? What can we help with? How can we make this work for everybody? And probably can't, but I think it'd be great to have them come in front of us, and so we can hear, and maybe it takes some pressure off the committee as well, as far as trying to make some decisions. But I think Councillor Rehberger's on that committee, so maybe he would have more insight into that. But
well, as far as the lacrosse, I don't believe they've come up with like they keep coming. And as far as I understand it, they keep saying we'd rather you didn't take on the tournament champions. We could rent out all this dry surface and everything, but they've never come back with a business plan to show us how that was going to work. Like it's all just been, and when we evaluated it last, it does seem that the tournament of champions doesn't benefit the town as much as you would think, talking to the fast food restaurants, and the fact that last year they put a clause in there, if you're in the tournament of champions, you have to stay in our list of hotels, and none of those hotels were in Innisfil. So, you know, we do need to have a big look at this one way or the other. And I think we need to come up with a policy that, because it seems to me that the dry users maybe should be more of a priority. And then I don't know about like hockey. If they do get going, they might want to keep the ice in longer, but they've already, Hockey Alberta has already canceled all provincials. So there's no real end game there to keeping it in a whole lot longer. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but so yeah, there's a whole lot of discussion to go on here, and we're up for it, or you guys, or either way. I'm
Councillor Bates, yeah.
I just wanted to voice like one personal knowledge of the hockey people. If they do get back, they're going to want to play some games. I think some of these teams have played like 2 games. And so even if there isn't provincials, they're going to want to, I'm sure they're going to want to, whether or not they're allowed to have any kind of a league or league playoffs. And so maybe back to Councillor Barclay's, that it wouldn't hurt if we heard from them. And in my little bubble, I didn't know there was going to be a demonstration in front of Devin Dreeshen's office today. So yeah, whatever we can have for knowledge is always good.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from council is any requests, or administration will continue working with those organizations. Anything to do that is outside of the normal operations, it'll be filtered into council directly. You do have a request as a delegation as early as next week by one of the users. So we'll make sure that comes right before council as your expectations.
Yeah, because Innisfail's not in the boat all by themselves. The whole province is involved. So Alberta Hockey will probably have something to say about it too. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Do you need a motion? Okay. All right, let's go on to discuss the committee appointments in light of the fact we're down to 5 again. Or 6 with me. Do you, how do you want to deal with this? Do you want, Vanessa, do you have any input?
Just give it to you guys for some thought ahead of reappointing formally next meeting, if you wanted to start making some plans.
Do you want to dwell into it a bit here now, or?
Would you like an email, Vanessa, to kind of know what we're interested in, as opposed to, does that make it easier? Or?
I think the easiest it would be a conversation, but
okay.
Whatever works for council.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Well, I mean, we have the Trail Society, the carts, that's only, what are they, a couple times a year? Once?
I actually emailed them last week to see if they were still regularly meeting, but I haven't heard back.
Yeah.
I was on that before, and they were meeting, I was going to say every 2 months, I think, when I was on that the first couple of years. It's fairly frequent.
Considering the COVID situation, it probably haven't. Yeah.
Just a suggestion, Your Worship, would it not be that the alternate move up into the head, and then we determine an alternate for these committees? I don't know.
I would agree with that. And any obviously, if there was a committee that had more than one or whatever it might look like, then it gets shuffled. But yeah, would probably be a common practice. But that's just one method of potentially filling those spots.
Are you okay with the library?
Yeah, for myself, Your Worship, any of the alternate positions that I would be fulfilling. If I was their alternate,
Okay.
I would be, if I was okay to be the alternate, I'd be fine to be the lead as well.
Parts in the library then for.
Just for discussion purposes.
Lead.
Yeah.
And regional library. Oh, no. Yeah, you're on back up there too. Your schedule going to allow you for that kind of commitment over the summer?
Well, they might just have to change your schedule, meeting times for me, and that's about all. It's just a small request.
Council does it. It's no big deal.
Okay. What about policing? Glenn, was he still on the policing committee? Is anybody willing to volunteer for that?
I would volunteer.
Mr. Harrison?
I would volunteer, but
Harrison's the alternate.
No, he's already on it.
Oh,
I would volunteer on it, but I don't need to. Like, I have some room. I'll just make that statement. I have some room. I'm not extremely busy, but yeah, I don't want to jump in. I don't know.
okay. You want to policing and safe community then? You take his place there?
I would do that.
Is that okay?
You know, as long as.
Is that okay with you guys?
Just because I spoke first, if there's somebody else that would be interested, we could still trade or whatever later.
I mean, there's a couple here like the IDP. We probably don't need a fourth. We haven't met yet, but we will. We got one coming up. Okay,
Yeah,
we could certainly use a.
Yeah.
We could use a fourth volunteer for that one then if we got.
I would volunteer for that one.
Good man, thank you. Of course, MPC, pretty important one.
Yeah, I'll bump up. Yeah, I volunteer for that one.
Don?
So then obviously we need an alternate because that is one committee that, no, we don't.
Yeah. They can't be on it.
Oh, they're both SDAB. So Jim's the alternate by default. Okay.
Yeah, I can be. Making noises over there. So, which?
Emergency management.
Oh, okay. All right. Where are we at here? Okay.
And just the alternates. Starting with carts.
Oh, I can pick up a couple if you want. I can go as an alternate for the carts. On.
Community services.
Okay. Alternate for community services.
Jean?
Jean? Okay.
Transportation committee.
I'll do that one.
Okay.
2 library boards.
It's a lot of fun.
I would cover the Innisfail Library Board.
Rod Shepherd needs you there, man.
I don't think my truck could make it all the way to Lacombe.
So do we want another one on IDP?
No, we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Did Danny? Oh, okay. You're a busy boy, but.
Yeah, just the library, Parkland Library Board. Harrison? Yes. I think that's
So
good.
Who's alternate? Don, do you want to do an alternate there?
Don's the alternate. Don's the primary.
Yeah, usually the primary takes both those.
Okay.
Yeah. And usually the alternate takes both too. But...
Okay. All right. So what else? We're done.
Yeah. If there's anything wrong next week, change it then.
Well, we can cross if you. I think I've got it marked here too, Vanessa, if you need help. Okay. All right. We'll just pass those on to for the next meeting for consideration. Roundtable. History.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, nothing too terribly much. I did obviously appreciate our delegation today for the personal services. I think that that was great that they came forward, and I'm glad to see that there is a large majority of our community that does take a lot of integrity and pride in the services they offer, and that to me was pretty heartwarming to know that they felt confident to come here and represent themselves. So that, other than that, Your Worship, nothing else at this time.
Okay.
Sorry. Well, pivoting off of those comments, I think the majority of people that I talked to would support the position of the letter that was read to us. This week I have MPC and both the executive and the general meeting for the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group, and I think I copied everybody. Certainly the provincial coal leases are going to get onto their agenda, and I guess I would remind everyone that everything that they look at would be the Red Deer River water quality and quantity. It wouldn't be related to camping and that kind of stuff. So but I'm very confident that that group will get engaged and take a position. The interesting thing too is they had a special committee last fall that met with the environment minister to make sure that they had a relationship established. So it should be very interesting to see where we go with it. Thank you.
I have MPC tomorrow, and also the Chamber of Commerce, and it's back to the comments of Councillor Harrell. I too very much appreciate women coming forward today, and without question, I think that created a lot of divide last week. I've never, well, in the 3 years last week, I've never had as many messages and phone calls over an incident. And, you know, I know there's people on both sides of that equation, but I think if people had the opportunity to hear what these women had to say today in that community, they, as they said, they've been long time business owners and employees in this community, and they were certainly very hurt at what went on last week, watching some of their clients go and get haircuts when they shouldn't have. So I don't know what the end will be with everything that went on, but it's pretty disappointing to see that happen in our community for sure.
So I also appreciated that them coming forward. That took a lot of courage, and I agree with all those comments, and I have community services meeting tomorrow.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also echo those comments with the hair industry. It was very disappointing to see what went on last week in a community that I feel is quite tight knit. And you know, this division here, I think, you know, we have a task ahead of us to try and bring everybody back together. And you know, and I think this was a start today. And yeah, we'll just leave it at that. We had our Community Policing and Safety Committee meeting on January the 13th, and I'm glad to announce we have a new chair and a vice chair. It's Sue Haddo, or Suzanne, and Joy Milne. So we wish them every success. I think they've did a great job on Monday, and really looking forward to working with them. Jean Boda, she gave a sort of a high-level discussion around and a presentation around the group that she chairs, the Alberta Crime Prevention Group. And we've instructed the administration or the administrative support at the committee level to go out and get a little more information around that group, and also the Canadian Municipal Network for Crime Prevention, and bring back to the committee what the terms of reference are for the groups, their mandates, and also a cost for the communities to become a member if we so wish. So that's going to come back to our next meeting, and we'll report back after that. We had another presentation by a name of John Beauchamp, and he leads or chairs the Restorative Justice group here in Innisfail. I didn't know we had one, but a very important group since 1996. They've looked at over 700 cases of, and mostly youth. Now they've had some adult cases, but John goes all over the world. He's a resource that called upon to do training for other communities, actually countries. He's been to Brazil to set up some restorative justice to groups there. So we have a group. There's 12 directors. They're doing great work in our community, and he gave us some examples of, you know, youth that, you know, they just sort of get caught up in something in the heat of the moment. And, you know, once you have a criminal record and you're charged, it never goes away, you know. And he's, and through this restorative justice, rather than going to court, and they can work it off other ways. And, you know, and he's had clients that now see him in the grocery store that come up to him and say, hey, you know, thanks. And they have their own families now. So it's a very, I was really impressed with what he's doing in the community. And, you know, he's always looking for volunteers, and they go through quite a vetting process. So I'd like to hear more from John. So I guess I have MPC tomorrow, and I would like to concur with Councillor Bates on the water issues around the Eastern Slopes coal policy. That policy's been around since 1987. It was put in place for a reason, and most of it was around water. If you look at the Forest Reserve Water Act, or the Forest Reserve Forest Act, it says right in there that the headwaters of all the rivers that go east come out, they're to be protected. So it's going to be interesting to see how they get around this. And that act's been there since 1935. So I'm glad that MUG is taking up the course. And just a note, maybe the Water Commission needs to be given a heads up. And I don't know if they would like to, whatever they need to do, but I think they need to be given a heads up, because water is very important. And these coal leases are all on the headwaters of these major river systems. So I fully would support that. So yeah, I think that's all I have, Your Worship.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that that area they're talking about, but fortunately the Red Deer River Basin is not, shouldn't be impacted by that area. It is, well, it shows a trace of it down into that area, but
the area that could be impacted affects the North Saskatchewan, the Athabasca, the Red Deer, the Bow, and the Oldman. So Kevin Van Tegum, who's a former Banff National Park superintendent, was out along the Oldman this past weekend, of course, southern Alberta more so, and he went and took some pictures and hiked in about 9 kilometers. And he's a huge part of this coalition that's trying to fight this a little bit. So there's 1.5 million hectares that are available for lease. So about the size of 10 Edmontons. And I know there's some documents out there that land has already been leased. And the work that Kevin saw on the weekend, there's already work underway to start mining. There's already a little piece that's come off a mountaintop. And there was a large truck going in on a trunk road when he was out there on the weekend for road construction. So this is well on its way. And I hope that, you know, I'm sure RD Mug and a lot of other associations and groups are very involved in this, because it's taking the tops off mountains. It's not mining underneath the mountains. So it could be pretty devastating to our eastern slopes, and the water is a huge deal.
Yeah, it's definitely going to, I mean, there's possibility of a portion of it getting, but you're right. No, we should all be concerned. I knew about this, probably this area that was under development for the last 2 years, and wondering, like, I've never heard a word about this thing happening. It's a huge strip mine proposal west of Nordegg, but anyways, yeah, it's going to have quite an impact on the eastern slopes for sure. Anyways, I've had a couple Zoom meetings with Alberta Health Services for a couple hours on the one, and we did our water commission Zoom meeting the other day. We're not too pleased with the provincial government's attitude that they owe us $3 million from the balance of a grant, and they're trying to renege on us. So we're having a little discussion about that. And saying, well, you don't, you know, they're looking at, I guess, at our bank account and saying you don't need it, I guess. But we do. I mean, it's not that case, but we just spent $400,000 plus repairing that ruptured line. So that was not an easy hit to take either. And there's no insurance for that kind of thing underground. Anyways, it's been an interesting couple of weeks, to say the least, with the and I will say that I did contact. I sent an email to the Premier and a voicemail to the MLA that you know, that was last Friday, saying, look, you know, we've really got to look at the impact of these regulations on small business, and certainly look at relief for them as soon as possible. And that was about the extent of it, just small business in general that I was referring to. So yeah, there's I'm getting some interesting emails, to say the least, about small businesses and what's going on. So yeah, it's been an interesting week. But how about Steve? Have you got anything to mention? No? Heather? Megan?
Just MPC and Community Services, both those meetings are via Zoom tomorrow. So.
Okay. Stuart, you're quiet. Vanessa? Mr. Becker?
Yeah, just wanted to, I didn't formally apologize to council for the technical issues we had last council meeting. So again, my apologies to you. A little bit of breakdown there to help ensure that your conversation deliberation is made public. Really not reflective on council at all. Certainly into my responsibilities to make sure we're in a full operation. So next time that happens, it'll be clear that the meeting will be recommended to stop, postpone until we can be available to all the public. So my apologies.
Okay, thanks, Doug. All right, if that's it for roundtable, I guess I'd entertain a motion to go in camera.
Your worship, I would move that we move into camera.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. All in favor? Carried, thank you.
5 minutes?